Really thrilled to look down at the list of speakers, from the legendary Von Lincoln to our own Shirk hero Chad Gaffield. Ottawa U, it's a real pleasure to see such a wide range of intellects come and focus here at the University of Regina. As the Vice President of Research, as you can guess, someone's on the dark side of all this. I am in the thick of this mad pursuit to count, to rationalize, to quantify, to demonstrate accountability. And there is quite a tremendous amount of pressure from politicians, from bureaucrats, from taxpayers to show how we're accountable. And I think every sector of society is dealing with this much more intense focus on accountability, and universities are certainly no exception. But as I'm sure you have been discussing in your groups, the audit culture has really fostered a knee-jerk reaction for us all to be providing immediate, short-term, quantitative deliverables. So will my son or daughter get a job after taking your degree? Is there economic payoff for a professor's work? The humanities are a luxury we can't afford. Or as William James would have argued, is there cash value in anything we do? And if there isn't, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. So goes the narrative. So the pendulum certainly has swung to the right. And you'll read in Canada anyway, in Academic Top 10 and other venues, in HESA as well, and I'm sure south of the board the same sorts of discussions are going on, that humanities perhaps in particular, and even pure science, so the philosophers out there, you're not alone in this. I think if you had a good conversation with any physicist or any hardcore pure biologist, they'd be saying the same thing, that the focus on application and immediate deliverable is the same, whether you're a poet or whether you're a physicist. It's the same challenge is there. And for better or for worse, in Canada, if you follow the MyTax and NSERC orientation toward partnerships, that's certainly where the government is pushing us. And again, I mean, there's a good news story on this, but there's also a bad news story that the pure sciences in the MyTax and NSERC case are suffering, or they certainly perceive themselves to be suffering. Having said that, I guess in the following, I don't wish to blame the victim, but in some respects, I feel that we, and I would describe myself as a quasi-humanist, we are in some respects, we're part of our own demise because I feel that we have not kept up with the external culture and haven't allowed our own, I hate to use this term, but I do it with some intent, the value proposition is either lost on power brokers, government, etc., or they don't understand it. And I think if that's the case, we've failed to communicate what our worth is. And with the question, we are worthy, but we haven't been able to communicate to das man, das, or the they well enough, I think. I'm going to wax philosophical for a second. For those of you that are fans of Martin Heidegger, put your hands up, right? If you want to read something that's actually clear, read his memorial address. And this was a speech that he gave in 1955 in praise of a composer who had died 175 years earlier, Konrad Kreutzer. And in this speech, he really interestingly talked about two ways of thinking, calculative and meditative thinking. What he said, and this he was really pointing his finger at people like Robert Oppenheimer and the focus, the 1950s focus, post-war focus on technology. arguing that our primary focus these days, or those days, was calculative thinking. So what we were looking for is, what is the bang for the buck? What's the economic payoff? What is quantifiable? Science can solve everything. And he felt that we were racing toward that, and at the same time racing away from what he called meditative thinking, and probably a better phrasing for it would be reflective thinking. So reflective thinking would be not looking necessarily at the worth of any particular thing, but looking at how that thing is understood against the backdrop of, let's say for argument's sake, society. So I think, put it in our context, what's happening is we are in this audit culture that we've all been discussing, and it is a primary example, I believe, of a rush toward calculative thinking. I think that's pretty obvious. And I would suggest and pose to you, to me, to us, that it's up to us to be communicating that this has to be a calculative and meditative enterprise, that we have got to be convincing in Canada, politicians, different situations in the States and elsewhere, but this is not a calculative enterprise. This is a meditative and calculative enterprise, and we have to see the forest for the trees, or we have to see the horizon, not just the specific phenomenon. And I guess my point here is, if we don't do it, they're going to do it for us. We have to show our worth. We are certainly worthy, and if we don't do it, how can we expect them, das Mann, to value us in general, or to value our scholarship specifically? So what I'd like to do is give you an example here at the U of R, and I know I see colleagues at the U of R here in the audience, and they may disagree with me, but I'm going to say it anyway. 4 years ago, and prior to that, when we reported to our Board of Governors, so the President is hired by the Board of Governors, ultimately we responsible to the Board of Governors. What did we do to show our research effectiveness? We gave them money, numbers. Right? This is how much we raised in Tri-Council, this is how much we raised in contract, and if the number was high, we were worthy, and if the number was low, we weren't. We kept giving them numbers, and about 3 years ago, it kind of dawned on me, is that all they want? And it turns out that that's all they read, because that's all we gave them. We did not try to educate our own Board of Governors, which ultimately, again, is our masters at the university. I mean, they do eventually, run the place, I suppose, or from a very high level. And if we weren't giving them this broad spectrum of research impact, then how in the world are they supposed to know any different? So we started on this journey about 3 years ago to open up, again, going back to Heidegger here, open up the possibility of giving them more information to see if they wanted it, or if they understood it, or if it made a difference. And I'm happy, thrilled to report that they dug it. Sure, they want the financial information, obviously, because they are, they have to have that. But they also want different measures of research impact. So we, and I think tonight Nick Carlton is in the stage left in the top corner. He's going to be giving you a closing remarks on research metrics, I believe, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I suppose, hey Nick? So we're giving them different measures of research metrics. Not just the number of publications, not just the number of citations, but formulations within. But that's not all. We're also giving them what our scholars do in terms of policy change. We're giving them what our scholars do in terms of social media. We're talking about our fine arts performances. And what I'm really doing is begging, borrowing, and stealing from our own Federation of Social Sciences and Humanities, where they're looking at a very broad set of bins for what research impact is. For the first time in the university's history, there's a vice president research narrative to the Board of Governors in which I'm able to talk to the Board of Governors about all of these things, not just the stats, but the wonderful things that are happening that don't really fit into a Thomson Reuters impact graph or don't fit into a revenue balance sheet. And our Board of Governors is consuming this voraciously. And it gives me hope. It gives me hope that this audit culture of tremendous accountability, it's true. But I think if we as scholars, I think we as administrators, the president has just walked in, so I've got to be very careful now, that we do a good job at communicating not only to people like our Board of Governors, but we do a good job at communicating to the public. We do a good job at communicating to the government of what, and again I use this cautiously but with intent, because it is kind of a corporate phrase, what our value proposition is. They need to know that what we do does not have to be immediate. What we do may have impact 20 years from now. Dr. Gaffield at a conference 3 years ago, Chad, I believe, you stood up in front of the room and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said that the crisis in the Middle East is not going to be solved by engineers, it's going to be solved by social scientists. It's going to be solved by political scientists, by religious studies scholars. And those religious studies scholars that were studying the topic 20 years ago, not just yesterday for a deliverable tomorrow. So in closing, it's true, we're in a challenging realm of research impact right now. We're in a challenging environment of accountability, but I do have hope that we can communicate our tremendous importance in society. And I think it's conferences like this, you know, this is a pebble, maybe a rock in a pond, and the ripple effect from this, I hope, reaches well beyond the academe, that this definitely hits the doors of the political realm, the bureaucratic realm, and we can start to make a difference. So with that, I'd like to welcome you all. I'd like to thank you all for your great work. Again, I'd like to thank Mark for this great vision that you had putting this together. And thank you so much for having me come this morning. Thanks, everyone.